All right, guess I can go ahead and kick things off. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna Weber. I'm a graduate student at the University of New Orleans, and I'm the organizer and the moderator for this panel. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. There's a lot of work that went into these events, so I'm glad to see them. Glad to see them happening. So before we get started with our discussion, I wanted to say a brief word about the Society for Conservation Biology, which is the organization that's hosting this panel, just in case we have any non-members in the audience. So the Society for Conservation Biology, here, real quick. Share screen. Okay, can you all see that? Cool. All right, so the Society for Conservation Biology is an international society of conservation professionals. Despite the name, it includes people in biology, but also in social science, communication, policy, economics, et cetera, because conservation is really very multidisciplinary. It's organized into 7 geographic sections that are all actively involved in conservation within their own regions. So we're part of the North American section, which includes the US and Canada. Members can join the regional section, but they can also join local chapters, and they can also be involved in working groups that work on specific topics within conservation science. SCB also publishes 3 different academic journals, and SCB and the regional sections each hold conferences regularly. So SCB North America had their conference most recently in Reno just this past year. Next year is the International Congress for Conservation Biology that's going to be in Rwanda. And then in 2024, the next SCB North America conference will be in Vancouver, British Columbia. So it's a really great organization. It does allow people to be really involved in conservation, and there's a lot of opportunities for professional development and networking. And we also try to provide a lot of resources to students specifically, like this panel. So I'm currently the chair of the Student Affairs Committee. This panel discussion series has been my first little bit of programming in this position, and it's been pretty good so far. A couple of the things that we have going on is we've set up a Slack workspace that's meant to be for kind of community building among students and postdocs in conservation science. It's for networking, sharing resources, asking questions, and building relationships among early career conservationists. So if you enjoy today's panel, you may also enjoy the Slack channel where you can kind of continue some of these conversations. And I'll post the link to join that in the chat if you're interested. We're also hoping next year to host some sort of skill building, professional development webinars, especially in statistics and data management, potentially in scientific communication as well. It's pretty early stages in planning, but if you're on the Slack channel or a member of SCBNA, you should hear about those as they come up and as planning goes forward. And finally, if any of you are current members of the society and you're interested in joining the Student Affairs Subcommittee and helping plan some of these events, feel free to let me know. Just shoot me an email, and I will add you to my list. So now after that, we can go ahead and move on to the good stuff and let our panelists introduce themselves. I will post the links to these various things I brought up in the chat for anybody who's interested. So whoever wants to go first in our panelists, go right ahead.
Hi, I'll go first. My name is Courtney Babin. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of New Orleans. My career path so far has probably been a little bit less traditional than most. I actually received my bachelor's at UNO, as well as my master's and my PhD, and now I am working there as a postdoctoral researcher. I'm a non-traditional student overall, so my career path is quite different from many. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm excited to share anything that I can with you guys today. And thank you, Anna, for having me.
Before we move on to the next person, I just realized, as I forgot last week to say, I forgot again this week, we are recording the session. So just something to be aware of as we move forward. All right, whoever wants to go next, go.
Yeah, I can go. I'm Jennifer. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently a master's student at Oregon State University. My current research is in social science. I'm looking at public perceptions of ocean acidification and how we can use the ocean to remind people of environmental values. Before this, I was getting my bachelor's at UC Santa Cruz in marine biology, which was very natural science focused. I had a lot of internships with natural science. And then my junior year, I started an undergraduate research position, which kind of, it was on tuna fishery bycatch and working with tuna fishers. And that kind of brought me more into the social science aspect. And then this summer went to NACCB, and that kind of networked a little and brought me to where I am now in grad school. So yeah, I still have it all fresh in my mind on that part.
Oluwaseun, do you want to go next, or maybe, I don't know if Danielle is ready?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. All right. All right, my name is Oluwaseun Wajayi. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Cincinnati, Ohio. My area of research kind of like intersects insect physiology, sleep, and circadian biology. So currently I'm trying to investigate sleep mechanism in mosquitoes and how it could impact disease transmission. My previous educational history, I had my undergraduate in Nigeria at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, before I won a Commonwealth scholarship to study a master's program in environmental health at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. Then I think I had a little IELTS before I was able to secure a PhD funding here at the University of Cincinnati. So if you're an international student, even if you're a domestic student, I think I came with a very rich history of applying for scholarship opportunities. So I will be a very good help here tonight. Thank you, Anna, for inviting me.
I can go next if you're ready for me.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I am Danielle Miles, and I am dually a doctoral candidate at the University of Nevada, Reno in the Ecology, Evolution, and Conservation Biology program. Hopefully going to be done here in the next month or so. I keep saying that, but it's going to happen. And I am the visiting assistant professor of conservation biology at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma. So I have recently in this last year, moved up to Washington and have my own ecological farm while doing those things. So that's why the PhD is a little bit slower. But my background, even though I do natural resources, I focus a lot on education. And so I've gone back and forth between my first undergrad degree was psychology, and then I added the additional major in zoology. I did a master's in forestry, both of those at Michigan State. And then I stopped doing academia and was teaching in Montessori, early childhood education, then went back for my PhD and started teaching at the community college mid-PhD. So that's why I'm in a kind of a teaching role now, even though I'm not done. So I do natural resources, research, wildlife, focused on non-game species and management questions, but I am also an educator. So that's my brief overview.
Cool, thank you. Those really great introductions. I would like to go ahead and start with one of the questions that was submitted online. Just 1 second. Okay. So it says, I don't have any research experience yet and consequently haven't been able to focus on one particular area of research that appeals to me. Is it still worth pursuing a master's degree? Do you have any advice? And for any of the rest of you, if you have questions as you think of them, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll read them out. Or if you want to just unmute yourself and speak up, that's fine too. So whoever wants to jump in on that question.
Yeah, ahead. I think I can jump in. I mean, you don't really have to have a lot of research experience to decide on whether going for a PhD or master's. But at that point in time, yeah, I will actually advise the person that a master's program might be a very good fit because you can actually experiment and you can decide whether, oh, I think I love it. I can now continue with the PhD program in this area. Or if you don't like it, you can actually, switch fields. So committing to a PhD at that point in time when you're not sure of your research interest might be counterintuitive at some point, especially if you don't like the research area. So yeah, that's just what I'm going to say in a nutshell.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Part of when I was an undergrad, I really had no idea that research would be an important part of what I wanted to do later. And it was an advisor that told me, oh, why don't you go, check out some different labs, see what's out there. And that's what I did. I looked at the different labs, looked at their interests, and found something that may have sounded like I might be interested in it. And I would research, do either through research credits. Some universities offer research credits for that, or even as volunteer work that's outside of academia that can also help you sort of narrow down a focus. But it is important to get a little bit of experience, not necessarily in research itself, but just an idea of, what you might want to plan for the master's degree. But the master's, like Oluwaseun said, is definitely a good stepping stone to sort of introduce you to future studies.
I think I have maybe a slight different nuance in my response. When you ask the question, should you get a master's degree if you don't have that research experience already? My follow-up question would first be, did you get into one? If you're already in line to start a program, then you can ask yourself different questions on the cost analysis of your time, and are you being paid or are you paying to go, those types of things, which I can address in a second. But if you haven't been accepted to a program and you're asking yourself, is it worth spending the hundreds of dollars and the hours to apply to programs, I would say not particularly. It's not. If you're going to kind of willy-nilly choose programs that sound cool in a bunch of different fields, you have to know that it's going to be a few $100s per application, and you're going to be writing different essays and framing your CV in a different way. And that's time that you could be spending volunteering on a bunch of different projects and trying them out. And so there's a few things, if you are going to be in a master's program, that I would add secondarily. It's easier to get into can be easier to get into course-based master's programs. So if you're going to potentially do a one-year course-based master's in GIS or a master's in education or something, that could potentially be worth to pay out of pocket for if it's able to get you a job or be a stepping stone into research. But unless you know an advisor or have some type of connection or background, applying into a physical science part of conservation biology, like a master's in bio program, it's unlikely that you would get chosen for a project, especially since those are paid, usually grant-based positions, unless you know somebody and have that background. So it really depends on the field of conservation bio you're going on. And I would ask a different question if you have the opportunity to do a program versus should you haphazardly kind of select some and apply. Generally not would be my answer if that was your intention of the question.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well, just because applying is a lot of time and money, like you mentioned. Really, yeah, emphasis on how much time it really takes to apply. And if you don't exactly know if you want to do research, you could be kind of allocating that time to volunteering or figuring out if you do want to do research. But with that being said, I think a master's, it's a 1 to 3 years usually. So it's, not a huge life commitment. Like a PhD is a little longer. So a master's is like a really good way to kind of figure out if the research route is the right one for you. And you don't need to totally know exactly what you want to research. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be doing 10 years from now, but like a master's program is really great to understand if this is something that I really see myself researching in the future. And at the same time, you're getting all of these really great courses that are applicable in almost any, like a lot of the courses I'm taking are applicable in any career route or research route that I choose to take. So I think it is really beneficial to do.
Thanks, everybody. Those were really great insights. Does anyone have anything to add?
I guess I do want to add another layer that there can be some, this is the same for cover letters too, benefit to simply writing your personal statement or your cover letter as if you wanted to go to that program, because then you'll really get the sense of, are you lying, or is this making you excited to write about and you imagine yourself in that position? And just that practice alone, even if you don't go through the whole process of applying, can be useful just for the mindset framing, which you can do without looking at anybody else's website for a master's position or a particular job. But if you need a little framework to test out the waters of, is that what you want to describe yourself as in the future, and sell yourself as that type of candidate, then you can have that personal reflection.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Does anybody else have anything to contribute, or we can move on to another question? Again, if anybody has anything to ask, you can put it in the chat or just yell it out, or I will pull another one from the Google form. Okie doke. Okay, so here's one. When you're checking out possible labs you might work in as a graduate student, what kind of clues might tip you off about whether that research environment is going to be a good fit for you or not? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. You know, I've had great experiences having, through both my master's and my PhD, and I've had some where you realize that, wow, was this a good fit, or should it have been something a little different? And honestly, I have to say, I think that you really need to sort of remember that this is for you. This is your degree, it's for your career. And it's important that when you start that, you recognize that, of course, we all need to learn. That's why we're there. We want to become experts at what we're doing. But you want to make sure that there's somebody there that sort of fits with your mold in understanding how you learn and understanding kind of your basic needs as a research student or as in coursework. And potentially somebody that, they don't have to be your best friend. That's not necessarily what an advisor is there for. But someone who sort of shares similar views. If there's anything at all when you go for an interview or when you contact someone that sort of sets you off a little bit, like, I'm not sure that I like the way that sounded. I would suggest keep looking, because sometimes the red flags that you might see really are the red flags. And it's important to find a good fit when you're looking for a program, for sure.
Yeah,
I was just going to say quickly, we can loop this in with Elliot's question. Any just general tips for picking advisors in addition to this as well?
Yeah, one thing I recommend while going through the interview process is to, like, when they're interviewing you, it's just as much an interview of them. So making sure that when they ask if you have any questions, like ask questions, ask what their advisement style is like, you know, what students do after graduating and things like that, to really understand if you'll mesh with them and if you really like their advisement style, if you think that that joining their lab will be really beneficial. And I think just really using those interviews and understanding like it is an interview for them as well. I think that helped me really find a great advisor now. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm going to add is that sometimes you just have to look at the lab environment, look at the current students, you know, how are they faring in terms of their own personal goals? Because you don't want to work with an advisor whose aim is just to fulfill his own dreams. You know, an advisor is someone that should help you reach where you want to reach. You know, just look at the work environment, because you don't want to get into a place that there exists a lot of, you know, unhealthy competitions between lab members. You know, it can easily, you can see the environment, you can know that. And that might be a very, you know, big red flag for you to avoid, you know, except if you're someone who is also interested in being a part of the rat race, then that might be a good fit for you. Yeah, then look at, you know, past students, you know, that might work for, you know, what's it called? Advisors that have been in the game for a very long time. So look at past students, especially if you're someone, maybe you have a passion for a particular, you know, career projection. Maybe you want to be in the industry. And when you look at the past students, they are all ending up somewhere different. So that might actually, you know, kind of like define what kind of training they are undergoing. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. So, I mean, a good percentage might work. You know, you can't just use maybe one person as a yardstick, but you're looking at 5 past students already, and they are all in the same field that is not consistent with where you want to see yourself. Then that might be a very big red flag. Right?
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. I want to see, Danielle, did you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
Yeah, I guess for that question, a lot of these answers were about once you've already met or have the opportunity of an interview. So I guess it's easier in that sense to predict. But if you're still just looking at the website stage or looking at their peer-reviewed research, it's harder to look for red flags and maybe easier to look for green flags. So something that you could look for on websites are whether or not they highlight undergrad researchers. So you have an idea of how really kind of helpful and opening of a lab group is it. If there's just grad students highlighted, or there's only grad students who work in the lab, that can mean that it's a hands-off advisor. Grad students are kind of on their own, or they're really, really competitive, which could be really great research, but maybe not. And maybe that's the type of environment you want to be in, you know, the highest level, you know, love impact factor journals, whatever. But for me personally, seeing undergrads or other community members on a website is a particular green flag. Similarly, if you know kind of the field that you're interested in, looking at what partners they work with, because not everyone's going to end up in academia, but the type of partnership connections that your lab advisor has are the type of people that you're going to meet during your grad program. And then those are agencies or organizations that you already have connections built at that you could more easily get a job post-grad degree with. And so I do want to give the warning that a bad website does not mean a bad advisor. There are many good advisors out there who are just bad at maintaining their websites. So I would look more for green flags online than red flags. But if you are interested in their actual research and you read some of their papers, another thing that you can ask yourself when you just skip to the methods. Don't even, you know, if you're just trying to look at different advisors, get to the methods. And if that's work that you see yourself doing, then that's potentially a good lab. If you read the methods section and it's really heavy stats and that's not what you want to do, or they counted the trichomes on 5,000 leaves and that's not what you want to do, that's showing you what the research actually is day to day, even if the story is a really cool conservation one. So something you can just kind of reflect on your own, even before talking to them, is their actual methodologies they write about in their papers. That's it.
I think I will also add that, yeah, because she mentioned green flags. I will also mention that, while you're trying to start, hunting for advisors, is that you want to look at, people who are productive as well, because, yeah, personal, I'm talking from a personal point of view. I'm self-motivated, or at least I still need external, motivation around me. So you don't want to join a lab where you're going to be the one doing the heavy lifting, and there's no productivity going on in the lab that could spur you to work. So go ahead, look at their lab website, check how many times they are publishing in a year. It doesn't have to be too many, but you don't want to go into a lab in which maybe, sometimes they might not have updated. So you might not just look at the website, but look at the profile of the professor themselves and check, when last did they publish a paper, because you don't want to go to a lab where you're going to be the one trying to push, yeah, because yeah, personally, I like, an advisor who is willing to publish, and it's a big motivation for me, so that I know that I can work on multiple projects at the same time, trying to push out papers there. But the caveat is, if you're not interested in publishing, then you go to a place that works best for you. I'm just giving this as a personal advice. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to get to Elliot's question, and then, because it's on the same topic, and then we'll go back to Michelle's after that. So these are really helpful answers. What about when you're really early in the process and you're only just starting to identify potential advisors? How are you doing that? Are you Googling people? Are you looking at the authors on research that aligns with your interests? Or how do you start to identify people?
Yeah, I think I can just cut in here. I mean, there are no how will I put it? There are no one way to do it. I mean, whatever works for you. So I think when I was trying to look for advisors during my own time, one of a senior colleague, told me, one of the senior colleagues I was, interfacing with then, told me that, schools in the Midwest are not that competitive. So what I started doing was trying to look for schools in the Midwest. And, I started, looking at, okay, I was not really used to the US at that point in time. So I needed to understand what are the Midwestern states. So that was where I started from. So I started looking for universities, at universities in Ohio, universities, Iowa, universities in Illinois, that was how I started. And, based on my own research interest, I already have what I wanted to do. So I was narrowing down to going, by going to the department, the departmental website, then looking at the professors, checking through their research interest. Then another hack is you can also use Google Scholar, just type the keywords of the research interest that you are interested in, papers are going to pop out. Then you can start searching through these papers to know, yeah, typically advisors are always the last authors. Am I correct? Always the last authors on the paper. So you can then start looking at the affiliation and trying to look, like once you kind of like pinpoint the affiliation, then you can search the school to see if this would be a very good fit for you. Those are ways you can go about it.
Yeah, I definitely think, let's say that I know Elliot mentions looking at authors with research that aligns with your interests. I think that's definitely a good route to go. Even if your interests are really broad, I started out with looking, for me, it was invasive plants. That's what I was interested in. And sometimes when you start to look at that, you start to see common authors pop up. And that's how you know that, okay, well, this lab is very active, and this, this PI or this professor might be somebody who could help me to build my ideas and to, guide me in the right direction. And even from there, you may be looking at something on a, okay, I'm interested in invasive plants, and that may lead you a little bit more towards, sides for genetics and open up tons of different doors that you'll find interesting. But Definitely looking at research that aligns with your interests is a really good start.
Yeah, I think another good way is if you had like a professor or something in undergrad that either does, I mean, they could do research that you're interested, but even not, going to a professor that you know and asking them, like telling them your research interests, even if they're super broad. Professors have tons and tons of connections. So that could even be a great way to get connected to another possible PI. So I think, yeah, just talking to faculty or even grad students that you know about things like this could really help you find different labs and PIs that you could potentially work with.
Yeah, so I wanted to also add something very important that may also help, I mean, I think this might be a big ask, asking people to kind of like, travel for conferences, especially if you're an undergraduate student, because you might not have that fund to do that. But sometimes, conferences could happen where you are domiciled. So just take advantage of those opportunities, go there, and, you might be fortunate enough to meet someone who might be willing to, have you in their lab. So that could also work. So take advantages of things that might be going on. Are there kind of like science expo going on in your university that might attract people from outside of the state? Just take advantages. Take advantage of these opportunities. That's what I mean.
All right, if nobody has anything else to add, we can go back up to Michelle's question. All right, so Michelle says, I resonated with Jennifer's experience focusing in marine biology and natural resources, but also having interest in social science. Do you have any advice on switching or insights on the differences between the two realms?
Yeah, I'll say that I'm in my first quarter of grad school, and I'm completely new to like social science and understanding psychology and everything. And I'll say right off the bat, there's a huge learning curve and definitely like a lot of imposter syndrome that came with it, because I'm surrounded by people who I feel like know so much more. But I came to realize that everybody feels like that. And yeah, I think it's been a really great learning experience, totally switching disciplines. And it's also, I realized like almost any research within conservation, you can, if you don't want to completely switch to social science, like any research you do in conservation can have both a social science and natural science aspect. Human dimensions plays into literally every single part of conservation. So you can totally find a project where you do bring in both aspects. And I would suggest that if you do have a lot of experience with kind of like physical science or biological science, when looking at grad schools, maybe finding an advisor that has more experience with psychology and other social sciences, so that you kind of have somebody to look to for those things, or even bringing on committee members that have a lot of experience with that. I think that's helped me a lot, because those are kind of people that I can look to and be like, I have no idea what this theory is, and they'll explain it to me. And yeah, so there's plenty of opportunity to either do both still if you want to, or completely, focus on, switch over and focus on that social science side. But it's something that has been really exciting for me to do. And it's just, yeah, it's been a really great learning opportunity to kind of bring in these whole other disciplines into research.
as someone who has gone back from and forth from education and the, we'll say, physical sciences of bio and field work, one thing that I would say is that you probably have experiences that you can market as relevant to a switch. As you know, if you do it, basically anything extracurricular, can you frame it? If you're actually at that step where you're ready to make a transition and you say, hey, I would rather do something in the social science side, or applied in some way, you probably have some type of volunteering or other outside experience that you can say that it shows that you've always had this focus on human health, right? Because even though you do bio, you've been volunteering at the food bank for whatever. Like if you have some other experience, I've been able to leverage that kind of skill transfer between positions really well, because even going back and forth from education back to science, being able to mentor undergrads is a valuable skill that people are after. Yes, they're not preschoolers, but that education has a value going the other way too. So just being able to think about the other extracurricular experiences you have. If you've just been focusing hard on science for a while, and the reason that you want to explore social sciences because you're missing some human element, maybe the first step really is to just kind of volunteer in your area and see, even if it's not related to your career, all experiences can be framed as relative to your career. So that just being able to market yourself with extracurriculars, I think that you can go back and forth for sure.
All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat as of now. But I think you bring up an interesting point. Can you guys talk a little bit about marketing yourselves with your extracurriculars? Like what kinds of skills are transferable, do you think, from whatever you might do for fun and whatever you're doing in graduate school? How do you make that come across in an application?
I mean, communication is one, so if you serve on a board, maybe it might be a student executive board, or it might not even be that, maybe in a group, and you have the opportunity of, sharing ideas, because one of the things you do in science is, sharing ideas, and doing so many other things like that. So communication is one, and it doesn't stop, even as a postdoc, as a grad student, and as a faculty, as a faculty member, you still kind of like, you need to still, improve that, communication skills. So communication skill is one skill that is quite, transferable, that you can actually, talk about in your application. And while you're doing, when you're writing your statement of purpose, you want to highlight, positions or organizations you're a part of that actually help you to be able to develop the skill and use them. Yeah, that's very important. There are other skills that we can talk about. Yeah, I'm just gonna allow other people to contribute. Yeah.
This is more from me during a PhD, hiring other people to work in the field with us, but something simply just about having other interests. If there's any way that you can make it relevant, something that shows that you're a real person and that you're interesting can help an application stand out. I had a friend who was the founder of the Michigan State Jedi Council. Basically, they just watch Star Wars movies all the time, but that came up in all of his interviews. Like things that stand out about you, make you interesting. If you've got 40 applications in front of you, the person that you want to work with is the person who's real. So don't make your whole application fluff. You have to have real skills, but having extracurricular activities and showing what your interests are can help you. And maybe that shows to the advisor or the job hiring manager that you're going to get along, or that you're going to get along with this group because you have a similar interest, which relates to a green flag I missed before, that if you're looking at people's websites and they have picture lab group doing something fun together, that's also a green flag of they work as a group and they're not this hierarchical structure of approval.
I think one thing that I often would forget during interviews and applications, like forget to put either on my resume or talk about, were just like random things that I did in my classes, like class projects with other students that shows you can work on a team and you can collaborate with other people. You know, some of my classes had short research papers, and that shows that you can think about a research question and you can write it out. I think just remembering like little things like that that you do in your classes are huge skills that you can definitely bring up in interviews and in applications. So just thinking back to all your classes and what you did in all of them and how it can apply to whatever position it is that you are applying for is really beneficial to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of you. And actually, you know, kind of what Danielle was saying about some of the extracurriculars, some of them, you know, are sort of what I'll call nerdy based. I am definitely a big nerd. You know, I call myself a nerd. I like being a nerd. And, you know, I will go out there and sometimes like the national park that's near me might have like a bio blitz or something like that, and I'll participate in it. You know, even things like that, when you can incorporate that into your application, it's like part of your, you know, I participated in this because of my interests. But, you know, definitely be real about yourself and, you know, your background, where you come from. And even if that doesn't seem to have a long list of, you know, great accomplishments, that's fine too. It's a matter of just being able to let yourself show through and what your interests are and where your strengths are within that application. And we all have strengths, you know. I can tell you just from experience. I mean, I came from, gosh, it was probably a good 18 years before I applied for my graduate school. And so my background was mostly just in real world work experience, right? You know, and it was very difficult for me to kind of sit down and evaluate what my strengths would be to apply to research and to science. But when you really start to think about the things that you're interested in, the things that you may have done, you'll find them. And I think those are important things to highlight.
As just a side note for switching fields, this is not true for my education part, but the idea of switching to social sciences or back and forth, if you have any statistics experience, that is important in nearly all of the fields now that do any amount of publishing or data analysis, whether it's invasive species or people's perceptions to zoos. There's going to be some of that. So that's a skill to highlight too.
Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to add about the switching fields. And I know that Jennifer touched on this a little bit, but you may also have the opportunity to have two like co-PIs in two different fields. We actually had someone in our department, you know, you usually would pick a department, let's say, whether it be in the Department of Biology or a Department of Psychology. But you could have two co-PIs, one from one department, one from another, that are willing to work together. A lot of universities are trying to incorporate interdisciplinary sort of focuses now. So I think that that's something too that might be helpful for you.
Oh, great. Thanks for our panelists. That was really good. It's nice to hear how you can turn your extracurriculars to you know, to help you to be successful in the future. And I think that applies to grad school and also, you know, well beyond into whatever kind of field you get into. Well, it's 6:55, so I think it's probably about time to wrap up unless anybody has any last minute burning questions they want to throw into the chat. Otherwise, I would just say thank you very much to our panelists for being here. And also thank you to Michelle, or not Michelle, Megan, for helping very much with the advertising for this and helping with get the Zoom set up and all of that.
Thank you.
Thanks for planning it, Anna.
Thank you, Anna,
problem.
for planning. Thank you for
Thanks
inviting
everybody
me.
for coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
thank you,
you.
everyone.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Have a
taking the
great-
time,
you.
everyone.
yeah.
Have a good evening.
Yeah,
You
bye.
too.
Bye.